finally time to start getting serious about computing down here. That's right, IBM. This is an IBM System P5 hopefully a quad-core version. These IBM System machines are interesting for a number of reasons, including this front control panel, which displays an excruciating amount of detail about the boot process and system status via what feels like hundreds of these progress codes you can look up in the manual. This thing also has what I'd call a sophisticated boot process and remote management scheme like nothing I've ever seen in any other enterprise equipment. We'll be learning all sorts of new acronyms: HMC, FSP, ASMI, BMC. IBM, in fact, is an acronym, so I'd expect nothing less. The first order of business is resetting the password on the FSP, or Flexible Service Processor, a tiny Linux computer inside this server which provides management capabilities. After that, we'll see if we can get AIX, IBM's proprietary Unix variant meant for enterprise machines like this, installed and running. Let's get into it. Well, let's start things off by briefly getting familiar with the machine itself. So again, this is a System P5. It's got a Power 5 CPU, a proprietary IBM RISC-based, I believe, CPU. On the front here, we've got the system control panel. You saw that earlier. Based on the type number there, 9131-52A. I believe this is what's called a System P520. It's either 1 to 2 cores, or maybe we're lucky and it's a quad core. We'll find that out when we get it booted. Blank drive bay here, built-in DVD-ROM here, and another blank here as well. It didn't come with any hard drives. I got this in a Craigslist slot back a few months ago with a few other items. These are just blanks, these first four, so you can keep your stuff in there, I guess. This is like classic. Look at all this material just for a blank. Classic IBM, just everything over-engineered and expensive. And then these real drive trays. This is what we'll actually fill up some drives with. This front bezel comes off quite easily. And in fact, for the rest of the video, I'm going to leave it off so that I do not damage it. Around back here, 2 serial ports, 2 redundant power supplies, 2 built-in NICs, 3 USB ports, well, maybe 2 USB ports. I don't actually know what this one is. It has a special indicator. I'll have to look that up later. This guy down in here with the 2 NICs and the DB9 connectors is the FSP, the Flexible Service Processor. That's the computer in the computer that lets us do things like manage it locally and remotely. This unit came with 2 fiber cards and 3 SCSI controllers, one of which is actually being used for the drives on the front. I'll show you that once we pop the lid off. And of course, being an enterprise server, we've got very nice set of system service information instructions on the top here. What's hot swappable, what has to be swapped cold. Oh, and it's already come in handy. That 3rd USB port is a rack indicator, so probably in an IBM branded rack, you can plug each machine in or something, I'm guessing. But basically you would plug some sort of light in the rack into that so that you can turn that indicator on remotely to know which machine you need to go service in the rack. And inside, a bunch of indicators up here, bank of 3 fans, the dual power supplies, let's pull those. Big proprietary connectors, no surprise there. They are pretty hefty. The FSP, showed you that earlier. We'll need to replace the battery and do some diff switching here to reset it. With that out of the way, we can get a little deeper. I believe this is a voltage regulator for one of the CPUs, or maybe there's only one CPU in here. I'll angle you in there in a second. And of course you can see the RAM. Something interesting probably for airflow is the empty DIMM slots have blanks, probably so air flows by, I would guess. This is that slot for the FSP, and of course our big power connectors. There's this massive connector here. I need to look up what it is. But yeah, that must be for a different type of control module maybe. And then of note over here, this SCSI card, I believe, is leading back to the backplane on the front for the disks. So the main board must not have a SCSI controller built in. I'm assuming it's using this one, so we'll leave that one in there at the very least. The fans, of course, are hot swappable. They need a little bit of help, so this one in particular, I'll put this close to a mic later. It is really grindy, really bad. They're all bad, but this one in particular, I pulled it out while they were running to try to determine which one was making most noise. We will attempt a repair on this later on. And I sort of think there's no way this thing won't be really loud. There's these plastic slots in here. Hopefully you can see me pushing in on those. There's just no way those don't make a ton of noise. I'm sure they're for dust prevention or something, but I'm pretty sure I can hear them while this thing is running. So yeah, it's always going to be a little loud, I guess. And then bringing you into the machine here, literally, that copper heat sink in the back is the CPU. I believe we only have one CPU. I don't want to get too deep into this thing unless I absolutely have to. And so far, just booting it up a couple times, I think it's fine, aside from the noisy fans. But let's pull these out and hopefully get you a better look at the CPU. The orange color means this can be done while the machine is running. Blue means that has to happen while the machine is off. So it should be as simple as lifting this up. All right, much better look. So yeah, obviously one CPU, the rest up here is some of the control modules, and then drive bays. And then maybe these are actually the voltage regulators for the CPU. Not sure, doesn't really matter. Hopefully, we're hoping that's the quad core, but we'll see. Yeah, as I suspected, this SCSI controller is being used for the backplane on the front drives. You can see it connected there. And some IBM engineer was really proud of their LED light tube work. This is pretty involved. They're over here to show indicator status way down on their board. These can be hot swapped, so maybe that is a factor. But yeah, these over here, general system statuses obviously come into this thing. But the LEDs are way down on the board, so someone used this elaborate light tube scheme. You can even unlatch and open the little light tube indicator cover separately in case you need to hot swap these large cards back here. All right, get your beverages ready, because in order to dive into this machine and understand what we need to do and how to use it, we need to go through a very brief history lesson and then go over all the core concepts involved in managing and administering this machine and all the different moving parts. You know what they say, can't get fired if you buy IBM. This System P5 can trace its lineage all the way back to 1990 to a series of computers called the IBM RISC System/6000. In 2000, the System 6000 line was rebranded to the IBM eServer P series. In fact, you might recognize or remember this eServer logo IBM used to use. The eServer P series was in turn consolidated into the IBM System P line of computers. And that brings us up to date to this IBM System P5 we have sitting on the bench here from 2006. Other consolidations took place after this, but for our purposes, we're up to date now. According to the IBM website back in 2006, this P5 520 would have set you back list price $11,896 US. And as you can see, it came in an absolutely bitchin' desk side tower form factor. Unfortunately, eBay sellers today are pretty proud of what they've got. All right, now let's cover some core management concepts and acronyms, it's IBM after all, of these System P series machines. I promise this will be brief and it will be beneficial for when we actually dive in and start using this thing. So we'll start with a visual. So you already saw the FSP, the flexible service processor. It's a little Linux instance that's actually running inside the enterprise server that lets us administer it both on the console and via a web browser. So as a visual, here we have another acronym, the Advanced System Management Interface, ASMI. We should be able to get to a screen that looks a lot like this being hosted by the FSP. So you can think about this like the LOM or the ALOM on Sun machines, the iDRAC on Dell machines. A lot of enterprise machines, all enterprise machines, have some sort of remote management interface like this. These IBMs are hosting on the FSP, the Advanced System Management Interface. We can get to it on the web, as you see in this screenshot here, and we'll also be able to get to it on the console. Now, on the back of that FSP card, you might recall, there was references to something called HMC, which stands for Hardware Management Console. Hardware Management Console in this System P and I series of IBM machines is a layer above the FSP itself. So these were traditionally physical machines that you would use to remotely or locally administer multiple enterprise servers. So this is the best diagram I could find. You see here, we have an enterprise server, in our case, the P5, and then you'd have another physical server, an HMC, which is being used to talk to the FSP on the P5 and administer it remotely. We're not going to worry too much about this today, but it is sort of the next layer above the local management that's happening. And I should also note there are also HMC virtual appliances, so like a VM you can install to remotely administer a bunch of these IBM system machines. So let's start interacting with this thing and seeing what the state of the world is here. So you would think, this being the processor card that you interact with for remote management and administration, that these would be the serial ports you use, but that's not what these are for. These are for something else. You can, when it's properly configured, use these Ethernet ports to access that remote management UI I was just showing you. But the actual thing you're supposed to connect to for a local console connection are the serial ports on the machine in the corner here. So these are labeled T1 and T2. All the documentation calls them S0 and S1 or something, which is confusing. Or maybe S0 is on the front. I'll show you that in a second. Also, fun fact, this power supply appears to be dead. Doesn't work at all. So we're going to get a bunch of warnings about that, I think. And this thing is super particular about its serial connection. So I had been trying to connect to my Windows machine with this USB to serial adapter. Nothing. Could never get that to work in PuTTY. Just a blank screen. And it's really well documented, the settings. 19,200, 8N1. Nothing. So got just a plain old serial cable here with the null modem going in to a Linux machine, and finally could get that to work, but still super finicky. Sometimes Minicom would work, sometimes it wouldn't. Most of the time screen works. One time all the characters were just being displayed double, and it didn't start working again until I restarted this machine for some reason. So yeah, this isn't my first rodeo with serial, but this thing, it either is damaged or is just super particular and finicky about its serial connections. All right, I caught that serial port misbehaving. Look at this. You have log. Yeah, it's totally messed up. So let's try Minicom. Yeah, also messed up. Sort of okay. It's frozen now. So I really hope that's my serial connection and not this machine. Yeah. All right, this is the serial console connected to that machine. I'm going to give it power, so basically plug it into the wall. Also got you pointed at the front panel here. So we'll give this a moment, and then we should be able to get to a login prompt. All right, so it's still going through some sort of early boot process, but you can see on the console when I press enter, we're asked for a user ID. I don't know the password. So this is what we need to reset, but we can see signs of life out of this thing, which is great news. Here it goes. Gotta love that. All the IBM. So good. So yeah, no OS image detected by the firmware. Of course, there's not even any drives in it. Control C to make that thing stop, hopefully. So yeah, I don't know the password, obviously. So what we're going to do is attempt to reset it, and then we can actually do something useful with this thing. All right, we're going to pull the FSP so that we can replace its battery and reset its password. And then I'll pull all 3 fans because I want to attempt to fix their noisy bearings. All right, first the easy part. Let's get this battery out. It is a CR2450. Has some charge. Might have still worked. All right, and then we have to flip the 2 tiniest dip switches in the world, and they're easy to miss if you don't know where to look. So these guys right here need to be flipped in the direction, the opposite direction of what they're in, and that should, and then you leave them, and that should theoretically reset the password. All right, hopefully I can capture what these sound like. Hopefully that came out. That's supposed to be silent. This is the worst one. This one's similar, the other one's okay. We'll do them all. So I'm going to try a technique I saw on Mike Tech's channel. So basically you cut open here so you can get into the bearings. You put a little 3-in-1 oil in there, and then you cover it up with tape, and hopefully it gets rid of that bearing grind. Hands are all dirty from that fan. Now I assume not all fans are, created equal and the same, but hopefully we're going to have a similar experience here. Oh wow, look at that. It's like rusted. Water got in there or something. Yeah. No wonder. Hopefully this can save it. Yeah, look at the piece I cut off. Absolutely filthy. Try to get some of that out with IPA. Oh man. Yeah, no wonder this thing sounded like crap. Yeah, not a lot of hope for this, but get some of that oil in there. Let it seep in. It's better. Far from perfect, but an improvement. And it's kind of sucking this oil in, so I'm going to let that sit there while I do the other two. Yeah, this one isn't as bad. Look, totally clean in there. So that one definitely had some damage, that other one. I'm not even going to mess with this one. It doesn't make any noise at all, so just those other two. Ironically, the really bad looking one is better sounding than this one now. But the basic idea is you kind of wipe off the excess here, and then you use some of this Kapton tape to seal it up. Well, overall, I'd say I'm happy with that. I bet that works really well in certain cases, and it definitely improved these. So let's get this put back together. Well, password should be reset. Serial console is connected. Let's give it power, see what happens. I'll be back in a minute. All right, I think it just recognized it's missing a power supply. Ooh, this is good. Fully booted. Let's see. Moment of truth. That's not good. Another one was general. All right, I'll be back. All right, no luck so far, but it's a good opportunity to show you this. So on this front panel, you can navigate through these numbers, these menus. If you go to 1, it shows you a bunch of information about the server. N means it's in normal mode, meaning it's going to boot normally. So now if we go up to 2, go in there, we can actually change some things. So let's go over to N, put it to M. That's manual mode. It fully unlocks everything this panel can do. Get out of there. Go up to 30. Get in there. Go to... Look how arcane this is. This is some IT high wizard stuff going on. Anyway, this is the IP address of the FSP port 1, ETH0. Now, I think this is configured to connect to an HMC, or it's confused. It grabbed that IP off my network. So I can ping that thing, no problem, but I can't reach it in a browser. I think there is a specific configuration it wants to be in. It wants to be on a private network, so I think I need to configure a machine and connect directly to it and see if I can get into the management interface. It's not really going to help me though, because the password hasn't reset yet. So this 168.1.155, if the factory reset worked with those dip switches, it should be on something like 192.168.2, that subnet. So the reset basically didn't work. I'm going to pull the card out again, reset the switches back the other way, and see if that makes any difference. Okay, all I did was flip them back, and now I'm in. So it knows it got reset, and it's asking me user ID to change. It wants you to reset the password right away. Admin. I wonder if I can just set it to admin. Okay. 80 columns, sure. 24 lines. We're fully in. Okay, now this is the console-based ASMI. We have full control of this machine now. We can do whatever we need to do. I'm going to go do some research, and hopefully we can get the browser-based interaction working. Well, you're not going to believe this. This is Windows ME. And we are looking at the Advanced System Management Interface for that P5. So I was trying to just load it up in Windows XP, but it had Microsoft Internet Explorer 7, which wouldn't load this page. The Mozilla version I had on there was kind enough to imply to me that it was an SSL error. Initially, I was, trying to configure a static IP, going through that ASMI, trying to figure out what was going on. I could ping it the whole time just like before. But here we are, fire up a Windows ME VM. It looks like total crap because you're looking at a Windows ME VM being screen recorded by Windows 11. I'm sorry. Let's see if we can get in. Oh, we're in. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm losing it. This is like too much. Okay, this is maybe better for you. We're looking at the vital product data. I like that name. Let's look at the processor FRU, display details. All right, a quick Google of part number 42R5863 shows me that it's a 2-core Power 5 Plus. Not bad. You know, I was going to do some really important work on this machine. Really needed that quad core. So yeah, it's a 2-core deal, Power 5 Plus CPU. Let's move on and see if we can get an OS installed. I can't get over this. I set up this Windows ME VM as a joke for another video, and it actually came in handy. It's the only way I can log into this thing. It's got IE 5.5, I think. Yeah, IE 5.5 is the only browser I had on hand that I could log into this ASMI with. So this is great. And before you get all excited and you say, oh, you got to upgrade the firmware or whatever, not touching it. It's a time capsule, not messing with it. I'm leaving it just as it is. This is absolutely awesome. So the plan was going to be to throw a couple of these SCSI drives in there, but we have a serious problem. Does that look like a normal SCSI backplane to you? It most definitely is not. So if you just take a look at the length of this drive and the drive sled from the IBM, obviously we're missing some sort of adapter plate at the back. And this reminds me to point out a commenter, Will Ross 6468, left a ton of useful comments on the video where I showed the Craigslist haul where I actually got this P5 machine in the first place. It actually set me off in the right direction when we were doing that serial stuff earlier, and they specifically mentioned that took a look inside the machine, I would see if I had the required interposer board that allow this normal SCSI connection to interface with the IBM, and obviously I was too stupid to go check that, even though they literally told me to. But anyway, if you're watching, huge thanks to you. Wouldn't have got this far without you, or at least not as quickly as I have. But don't worry, don't panic. I've got a plan, and there's no way it's not going to work. So here's what I'm thinking. Take this converter board, convert this over to SCA 80, take this bad boy, get that in there. All right, we've got a cable now. And we've got all sorts of options on the back here. That cable converts down to this smaller plug. What could go wrong? Just like the IBM service engineer would have done it. This has to be some sort of joke. The DVD-ROM doesn't work. All right, let's see what's going on here. Pull this blank out. Ooh, another little drawer for your snacks. I'm just going to spray down the contacts and reseat this guy. I love IBM branded stuff. So cool. All right, I just blasted it with this and then reseated it. This is the second broken IDE DVD-ROM I found myself dealing with in like a week. Not good. Am I missing some parts? Is that a power plug there? It's not plugged into anything? This is the back plane of that DVD cage. Yeah, no luck. I think we're missing some parts. I think I'm missing a power cable. At the very least, for this whole upper drive cage here. Man. Okay. It just keeps getting better and better. I have zero faith, maybe one faith, that it can boot off of a USB DVD-ROM. So, we'll give it a shot. Just doing some totally normal stuff here. If you aren't administering your enterprise equipment with Windows ME, are you even living? All right, just for fun, we're going to boot it up from the web ASMI. And I forgot to show you one of the coolest things, the real-time progress indicator. It's a web recreation of that front panel. Shows you what's going on the green front panel. So cool. So I think we go over to Power Restart Control. And I think we want to boot to something called the SMS menu, which is going to let us hopefully choose that USB device as the boot drive. I think if we just do this, it's going to turn on. Yeah, it's doing something. You can see the number has changed, and they're continuing to change the progress codes. So eventually, it'll get to a state where it actually fully powers up. We'll hear the fans. All right, just powered up. The fans aren't perfect, but you'll have to take my word for it that they're better. That was a cool fix. I would recommend that. That was fun. All right, let's switch over to the console. So here we're on the serial console, and it's just going to spit out all its progress codes. Takes a while. Takes a few minutes to fully get going. and then we'll come back when I'm in the SMS menu and we can figure out how to boot this thing off that disk. I'm so stupid. Of course this thing doesn't have power when the machine's not on. Just the FSP was on and I'm trying to open this like a moron. Probably works fine. I'm gonna leave that little CD-ROM montage in there just to show you. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyone can do this. Sweet. It's looking for everything. SMS menu. Continue to password entry. Select boot options. I haven't done any research. So let's select install. Let's configure boot device order. Select first boot device. I want it to be the CD. Does know about that IDE CD-ROM, so let's do that. It doesn't know about that hard drive, so I'll be back. Can you believe this doesn't work? I mean, how could it not? So I'm trying to target the SCSI card I have it plugged into. It's this P1C5, and in fact, the lid instructions came in handy again. They tell you the identifiers of these PCI slots. I don't know which one's T1 or T2. I've tried all of the different slots on it. I can't get a drive to power up. Maybe it's my converter board? Well, I don't think we're going to get a hard drive working today, but we are booting, I think, into the AIX installer, and we've got 4 gigs of RAM, so we know that now. Yeah, the installer, AIX is doing its thing, but it's pretty slow. Love seeing a 1994 copyright on some hardware system microcode. IBM. Yeah, so obviously without a hard drive we're not going to get very far here, but I think the machine's working pretty well. One example of why these status codes are kind of cool is I've been sitting at D200, A200 for quite a while after telling the system to power off, and you can just go look it up. And yeah, D200, A200 is begin partition power down, so it's doing something related to turning itself off. Kind of cool. Well, we don't have AIX installed yet, but we were probably dealing with too many acronyms for one day anyway. Overall, I'm pretty happy. I think this thing's in really good shape, save for one bad power supply. That's fine, unless the other one breaks, I guess. I tried all sorts of different configuration settings for these SCSI drives I've got. It's probably these converter boards. I tried tons of different jumper settings, and yeah, just couldn't get this thing to recognize these drives, unfortunately. So the next order of business will be hunting down some of those interposer boards that go on the back of these drives and allow it to connect with the backplane here. I can't find any of them on eBay, or barely any mention of them online. So these things here, there's 2 backplanes. They're called 4-packs. You can find those for 20 bucks each, no problem. You can replace those all day. But to get something that converts from LVD SCSI over to whatever that backplane is, I can't find anything at all. So I'll have to do some more research there. I'm sure there's probably also a way to just get those SCSI controllers via cables connected to some drives. I tried different IDs, everything. Couldn't figure it out, but we'll definitely be diving into that in a future video. If I can't find one of those interposer boards, I do want to get this thing running. Speaking of hardware, if you think the moment I discovered that the HMC, the hardware management controller, which again is used for controlling many of these remotely or locally, was actual physical hardware, and that I didn't go on eBay immediately and buy the cheapest one I could find that theoretically supports this, well, I guess you don't know me very well. That's exactly what I did. So that's on the way. I was really hoping it was going to show up in time for this video and I could do it all in one video even without the hard drives. But the eBay seller's kind of taking their time. So we will definitely be having a video where we pair a real physical HMC with this thing and control it remotely with that. That'll be super fun. Overall, I'm super impressed with this IBM stuff. I think it's actually really fun to play with. Super interesting approach to remote management. It all felt very IBM while you were doing it, so I had a good time. There's definitely going to be more content on these things coming. I really want to get an operating system running on this thing. If you want to support the channel and keep the content rolling, you can go check out my Patreon. I post behind the scenes type footage about what I'm working on and the occasional early video. But at any rate, I hope you learned a little bit about these power machines, maybe inspired to check them out yourself. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. The boss here says we're an IBM shop now.